I was thinking the other day about what it's like to make friends and transition from high school to adult life in terms of making friendships. And the fact that no one really ever tells you how hard it's going to get to make friends once you're out of school or, even college. I feel like in school, friends, they just kind of happened, like you're thrown into a classroom, the same people 5 days a week, whatever, and you just kind of make friends, it just happens pretty naturally. But once you become an adult, or once you're out of college, it's like, what do you even do? Where are you supposed to start, Like, I feel like no one really warned us about when you're younger, making friends is kind of just like built into your life, right? Like maybe your mom sets you up on a play date, or, you, like I said, you just end up in the same classroom as your friend, and that's pretty much why you became friends with them, because you just grew up with these people. But you're not really put in situations like that when you're an adult. You might have your job, you might have, a club or going to the gym, but it's so much more, there's so much more friction. You know what I'm saying? Like when you're in school, you just kind of exist in the same space as other people, and they're your age, which is really important, because when you're an adult, you might be working across from someone that's twice or triple your age, and you don't have to worry about that when you're in school. It just kind of happens. Like, when you're a kid and maybe you met your best friend on the bus in kindergarten. That's how I met my first really good friend. We just sat together on the bus, it was completely circumstantial. Or like maybe you are in assigned seating at lunch and a teacher just made you become friends, essentially, But adult life is just so much more effort, School friendships felt like there was no planning required, no scheduling. You don't really have to put in any effort, It just happened by sheer proximity. But once you're out of that system, like for me, when I was at my job, friendships don't just fall into your lap, It doesn't happen that way. It's strangely difficult and awkward, It's not something that naturally happens. And so to make friends with coworkers or whoever it is in your adult circumstance that you're in, it's so much more unnatural, You have to go out of your way to meet people, You have to hope that they're not weird as well, or they're busy with their own life, or they're just not really interested in being friends with people. And then maybe when you go to a workplace and you try to become friends with someone, maybe you find yourself reading into other people's interactions and you think they hate you when in fact they're stressed out just as much as you are, Everyone is kind of drifting through adult life with the same problems, but we all feel too scared to talk to one another, And when you're not surrounded by people on the daily, maybe nowadays you're more socially isolated, it's even more difficult, It's not the same way that it was when we were kids, Because I think a lot of people want to be friends. We all want to be more sociable and kind of get back to that 1950s, 60s thing of like, oh yeah, let's go have picnic with the neighbors, or, let's just have a community built into our lives, We all want that, but the workplace and adult life just isn't really built for a reason to keep talking to one another. It's inherently superficial. We're all there because we want to make money. We're not there to make friends, at least not the primary reason. And so when everyone has this loaded motivation behind being there, it's so much less conducive to building long-lasting friendships. And I guess it just really catches you off guard, when you're in high school and college, you're not really thinking about the future. You're not really thinking about making friends down the road and what that's going to look like for you. And no one's going to warn you, that's for certain. Like maybe you're watching this video right now and you're 16, 17 and hearing this makes you think about this in the future. That's great. But no one really told me that's how it was going to happen. You just kind of maybe assumed that it was always going to be that way. When you're sitting in the lunchroom in high school with your buddies, you just kind of think that's what life was always going to be. You're like, oh yeah, every day at 11:30, I sit down with 5 of my best friends and we have lunch, and that's just what you do. And then if you're not careful, years can go by in college and then you're like, what the hell happened? I think everyone just kind of assumes that the older you get, the more put together everything becomes. You know, everyone thinks that adults have everything figured out, and that when you're a teenager, it's kind of just like, I don't know what to do with my life, but my parents know what they're doing. You know, they're all put together and they're capable, you know, big, proper adults, you know? And we never really think about the fact that we are eventually going to become that. And we probably secretly hope that it's always going to be the same simple way that it used to be. But it just doesn't work that way with friendships, man. It doesn't work that way with a lot of things, but it certainly doesn't work with social lives. And friendships can be so circumstantial, you know? You might have been friends with someone in high school because that's just what you did for your entire life. Like I said, you might have just been friends with them because you sat with them on the bus. But as the years go on, you might realize like, this person's kind of flaky, or this person isn't really like talking to me as much now that we're going to different schools in different states, right? Things are going to change. That's just how life goes. And it can just kind of hit you hard when you become an adult, like, damn, where did the time go, you know? Everything changed after 2020, right? When we all went online on Zoom calls and we resorted to, you know, complete isolation, pretty much. Everything has become so much more lonely. I think everyone is suffering from a really bad, low level, but still very present level of social anxiety, and that we don't know how to socialize like we used to, you know? You know, it's funny, right? Like, we probably all like to play games, you know? I love playing games with people, especially in my community, from the channel, and the people that I've met through this channel that I've made. You know, sometimes you might be sitting in a Discord call with random people on the internet and you're playing games with them, and there could be like 20 people in there, and you're like, wow, I'm in a big group of people, you know, I'm socializing, right? But I feel like when you really think on it, you can still feel so insanely alone, you know? Like, presence with people doesn't necessarily equate to connection. Like, you know, I catch myself thinking about this quite often, you know? Like, my job as a creator, you know, I stream and I have people talking in the chat and I'm reading comments every day, and maybe I'm even getting on the flowstate, you know, my Minecraft server, and I'm like, man, I'm around all these people, and yet I still feel so lonely, you know? I'm technically talking to people all day, and, you know, maybe your situation is that you're on Zoom meetings with coworkers, or, you know, maybe you're still in school and you go to class every day and you've got 30 people on a Zoom call. But what do you know? Everyone's got their camera turned off. No one wants to talk to you. And you get off the Zoom call, and it's like you're just in the same old lonely-ass bedroom. There's no connection anymore, you know? Or there's far less than there used to be. When I was in high school, as much as it sucked to have to go to class 7-8 hours a day, I think it really was healthy to reliably always be around my best friends every day, pretty much. I reliably could always physically talk to someone, and we've lost that as a society. Not because it's anyone's fault, it's just the way the world has changed, but man, does it suck. And again, I want to harp on this point of loneliness, because in my career path, and I'm sure all of you can relate to this, is, you know, you might be in calls all day or talking to people technically, but you didn't really talk to anyone. You know what I'm saying? Like, you might have been with people, but you weren't with people. There's a distinct difference. There's not that depth that we're all craving, you know? You don't get to like really sit down and talk to someone and have like a deep conversation in the same way that you could if you were in person. And I'm not trying to detract from the value that you get from online interaction, because I would be kind of a hypocrite. I know that a lot of people have made really good friends, again, through my Minecraft server, the flowstate, and I've met some really cool people through that, but it's not the same. That's what I'm saying. I don't think anyone's going to disagree with the fact that sitting down on a nice porch and sipping some lemonade and talking with your wife or your husband or your best friend is not at all the same thing as occasionally calling them on the phone or being on a Zoom call, or certainly not the same thing as being on a Zoom call with Dale from accounting or your 10 random coworkers that you don't give a shit about. It's not the same, and it's not good for us to not have any sort of real social interaction. I'm extremely grateful that I have my girlfriend, and every day she can come home from work and we get to talk about our lives and what we did in the day, and that's great. But we have both mutually agreed that it's not good that that's basically the only interaction that we have with each other. We don't really have the in-person friends that we used to. We're now living very far away in a new city, and you just don't have that connection that used to exist. And you would be lying to yourself if you said that had no real consequences. And it's very subtle. You know, it's like when this transition happens from high school, college to adulthood, it's like your brain can't even really tell the difference at first. You know, you kind of feel socially full from, you know, scrolling on Instagram or, you know, seeing other people interact or even being on Zoom calls. You know, you feel okay. I remember when I started my job, my remote job after college, and I was like, this is fine. But it doesn't really give you that connection that you're craving. You know, it's not the level of depth that we all need. And it's very subtle. Like I'm saying, you know, you're not going to really flip a switch and suddenly realize, damn, I'm lonely right now. You know, that's something that creeps in over months or years. And you have to be very conscious of this kind of thing before it's, I don't want to say too late because it sounds dramatic, but you know what I'm saying? Before you feel like it's really a problem. You got to be really conscious about where you are in your life and be like, no, this really isn't cool, man. This isn't okay. I'm so isolated. I need to get out. I need to go to the gym. I need to do something because this is not working. Because I know firsthand, as we all do, how subtle it can be. You know, you could be doing something, you know, chill, like playing a game or making dinner or watching a show, whatever. And you realize like, man, I haven't seen an actual friend face to face in like 6 months, or for me, like once a year, pretty much. Literally once a year, we'll have an annual fire back in our hometown, and we'll get together for like 4 or 5 hours, and then hey, I'll see you again in another year. It's such a weird kind of isolation. Like you're not stranded on an island like completely alone, but it's like you're in a crowded room and no one's looking at you. Not that, you know, I hate being the center of attention, but you know what I'm saying? Like you feel like you're around people, but you're not with people. And again, I want to emphasize the point that I understand that relationships change. And for me, I can definitely relate to this, feeling like friendships are just not what they used to be. Like some people are flaky or more, or, you know, someone that you only see every 3 months, like you still call it a solid relationship or friendship, right? Like I feel like sometimes I'll make plans with someone and it's like, okay, this is a big deal. Like our annual fire, you know, this feels like an event in my life. I'm ready to do it. We're going to coordinate our schedules, move stuff around. We're going to get stuff done. I'll make sure I take time off work so I can get home for the holidays and make sure it all happens, right? And then half the time someone cancels or reschedules or like, hey man, I'm actually really busy. And it's like, that sucks, you know? It sucks to be canceled on and to feel like the very limited social interactions that you have fall through all the time, you know? Like I'm trying to bring it back to that point of like, how did life get so complicated where it became so much effort to be friends with people? You know, it just felt so effortless in high school. And I'm trying to word this in a way that doesn't feel like, you know, complaining and hoping that, oh, we just want to go back to the good old days. Like, it's complicated. That's all I'm saying. It's really complicated. And I know that a lot of you guys can probably relate to what I'm saying, and it's hard to articulate it, but we all kind of feel it, you know? Like, it just feels like the bar has gotten so low and the barrier to entry is so high, and that the good interactions are too few and far between now. Like, hey, I've got a really good friend. We're my best friend even. We love talking to each other, but I only see him like every 6 months. Or when you become a real big adult and you have kids, maybe every few years, you know? But our reality has become so distorted that we're going to say, hey, that's as good as it's going to get, man. That still counts as a friendship to me, you know? I might see you 20 more times for the rest of my life, but hey, at least it's a friendship, you know? Like the bar is just so low, and it's not anyone's fault. I'm just saying it really is unfortunate because we're all tired. We're all working. A lot of us probably feel kind of broke, you know, like we don't really have the time to go party or play games every Friday night. Like I used to play Civilization 5 with my friends consistently every Friday night. I just don't have the time for that anymore, man. Like life is too expensive now. I have to be working, you know? And it's sad how this kind of connection slips away if you're not, you know, constantly watering it like it's a plant, you know? I want to feel like there's a solution and that it will get better and that, you know, we're going to get back to the good old days. But I think we all just have to sit with the reality that life only gets more complicated. It doesn't get easier as an adult. If anything, it gets harder. You've got more responsibilities. You have relationships that are going to fizzle away. And it just kind of sucks, man. It's not fun to be an adult all the time. But I want to emphasize that it's not all bad. Because while it does sting that you're not going to be able to see your best friend every single day of your life, you're not going to be able to have lunch like you used to in high school, it does make it really meaningful and impactful when you find that again. It's a classic case of taking things for granted. You know, we feel like it's always going to be like this. We're always going to have these friends in our lives, and then over time you realize that's just kind of withering away. You have to be conscious about what you have in the moment and not take it for granted. I am so grateful for my friends. Even though I don't get to see them as often as I wish I could, I'm so happy that they're in my life. You know, they've got girlfriends and wives now, and we're all living hundreds, if not thousands of miles away from each other. It's the way that life goes. But as long as you remember, hey man, this is still special. This is still something that is very rare, and I don't want to give up these kinds of genuine relationships. Because while it does take more effort to keep those relationships alive, it's so rewarding. It's no different than feeling like you've got a really good thing going with your partner, maybe your girlfriend or your boyfriend or whatever, and it's like, man, they're so great. This feels so rare. That's how I feel with my girlfriend. I cannot possibly ever take that for granted. I know that my girlfriend is such a catch and that I would never, ever find her anywhere else. And so I want to make sure that every day she feels special. And I probably don't do a good enough job with my friends where I'm like, hey man, I'm just really grateful for the thing that we've got here. You know, like guys don't really do that. At least my guy friends don't. I don't do that. But deep down, we're probably all thinking that. And we would all do better to remind each other that we truly care to keep these relationships going. That might not be relatable for everyone. I'm sure a lot of you guys feel like, hell man, I don't have any friends, or, you know, it's tough out here. I feel that. I definitely feel that. I didn't make pretty much a single friend, a genuine friend in college. I went those 3-4 years pretty much just getting my degree and getting out. I get that. But just try. And honestly, dude, a lot of the friendships that I've built lately have been through stuff like this, like streaming and gaming, and it's been so good for my mental health. I recently was introduced to this game called Peak from people from my community, from the flowstate, and they're like, hey man, let's play this, you know, and I would never have done that in the past. You know, I was always quite socially reserved, and I didn't really feel like I probably shouldn't be like on a Discord call, you know, like playing with like just random people. Like, I don't know, the dynamic felt weird to me. But I feel like I've just been so socially deprived that I'm like, hey, you know what? Sure, these people are cool. You know, I've been vibing with them well on my server. I'll give it a try. And I have been absolutely obsessed with Peak, dude. It's like a climbing game where you climb up a mountain and you can have like, you know, 10 people in there working together, and you use like ropes and chains and like lollipops as like power-ups to climb up the mountain. You've got like a stamina system. It's so fun. And I've literally put in like 40 hours into the game. And I was already, you know, vibing well with these people before I played Peak with them, people from my community. But even more so afterwards, I'm like, man, this is what I've been needing. I've been missing that with my friends. We haven't really been able to do that at all. But there's reliably always someone like, hey, let's play some Peak, you know? And it's been so good for my mental health. I literally said that to someone. I'm like, dude, hey, real talk, this has been really good for me lately. And, you know, some of the most real cool people I've met have been online. You know, I was just saying earlier that, you know, it's not the same thing. It's not always going to be the same level of depth that you probably want with online relationships and friendships, but it still can be really good. I don't want to discount that. There's very cool people that you can meet just playing games online and fostering connections through a mutual thing. Like, oh, you know, we both like to play Minecraft. We both like to play Peak, whatever it is. You know, when you go to the gym, hey, we're both at the gym. We both like to lift weights. You know, let's see what else we might share in common, right? And at the same time, it can get to a deeper place. Like, I've had some real deep talks with people from my community, and it's been probably good for their mental health and for mine to be like, hey, it feels good to have a genuine conversation with someone. It just feels good, man. Like, that's what being a human is all about. It's to have a deep connection with other people. I think we can all relate to just how shallow and awkward and uncomfortable like water cooler talk is, or small talk, you know, where it's like, hey, how's the weather, Jim? Like, it makes my skin crawl thinking about all of the times where I had to do that in my old 9-to-5 job, and that I'm so grateful that I don't have to do that now. You know, you're never going to escape small talk, but it just feels so good to just connect with someone like, hey man, I'm really glad you talked this out with me on Discord or whatever. When you're just like walking through the world in Minecraft and like, hey, let's just sit by a campfire and just talk about something, you know? Let's just have a chat. I've had some really emotional, meaningful conversations with people on my server, and I just know that that's in some format what we're all craving. We're all just craving deeper connections with people. It's not that anyone is broken or that we, you know, forgot how to socialize, or maybe we did a little bit, but it's not like that's your fault, you know? Like there were very real lasting consequences to what happened 5 years ago now, you know? Like no one could have probably predicted the extent of the psychological and social damage that kind of thing would do. That level of isolation is something that we had never pretty much ever had to deal with before, and certainly not in the internet age. And I feel like a lot of people would say that, you know, they feel like they lost their social skills because of that. You know, like we all got reset. People were more irritable, and, you know, it was harder to have conversations and put yourself out there. It's harder to talk to girls now. You don't want to like walk up to a girl because hell, you haven't talked to a girl in like 3 years, you know? Everyone feels a little bit more anxious, you know? It's like we forgot how to talk to strangers, and you overthink, you know, the texts that you write. Like I've become so much more of an overthinker and anxious about things lately. It's not good for your mental health to be that critical with yourself. But just because it's hard doesn't mean that you're bad at it, or it doesn't mean that you're gonna be destined to be lonely. You know, you just gotta give yourself some grace, and, you know, maybe, okay, instead of trying to have 10 surface level friendships, just focus on finding 1 or 2 people that actually really get you, you know? That's all you need. You don't need like a gigantic friend group that's, you know, like social media portrays it like, oh, I've got 8 of my best friends living in LA, all living our best life. Like, come on, bro. That's not realistic at all. You just need like 1 or 2 people that laugh at your stupid ass jokes, you know, or like they just get your humor. It never feels like you have to like put in a lot of effort. It just feels like right where you left off if you haven't seen them in a year, you know? That's what you need. You don't need surface level relationships. Anything worth having is worth fighting for. You know that classic saying. And to be human is to socialize and to be with people and to talk about our days, talk about life. You can't go through life without people. It's going to feel awkward, but it's going to be worth it to try. Hope you found that helpful, and I'll see you in the next one.